Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Now, what we're going to discuss might seem simple at first glance, but upon closer inspection, it reveals the profound intricacies of human behavior, relationships, and the underlying psychological forces that shape them. And this is important for us to consider as we attempt to unravel confused, hateful, and dramatic stories that shape them. Why do men return to you after a period of no contact? The answer, to put it bluntly, is this. People, especially men, are not as self-sufficient as they often believe. And this is not a fault or a weakness. It is an inherent characteristic of human nature. We are creatures of connection, of need, and often we fail to recognize the significance of the people around us until they are no longer within our immediate reach. The social hierarchy makes individual success impossible. The despot navigation system is just one example. And the goal is constantly to feed the hunger and to prove your worth in connection and approval from others until they are no longer within our immediate reach. Let's unpack that a little. When someone steps away from your life, whether by choice or circumstance, there is a phenomenon that often occurs, the psychological void. This void is not something that is immediately acknowledged because it's subtle, it's insidious. But it's real. When a man leaves, when he retreats, he may think he has moved on. He may even convince himself that he is better off in solitude or with the distractions of the world, but there is a truth that he cannot avoid. He has learnt something profound. Absence creates presence. When you are absent, you are not gone. You become a part of his thoughts, a part of his reflection. And here's the thing, men are not robots, they are not devoid of emotion or connection. They may retreat, they may seem detached, but deep down they recognize the significance of a meaningful relationship, of someone who brought depth and understanding to their life. The no contact period doesn't just serve as a physical separation, it is an emotional space that forces introspection. In this space, the person who once provided comfort, support, and yes, even challenge is now gone. And in that absence, there is a realization. What was once taken for granted is now missing. Let's be clear here, this isn't about manipulation, nor is it some kind of game. It is about the natural laws of relationships. Distance and space illuminate importance. And it is in this space that people often reconsider what they had, and more importantly, what they lost. But there's another side to this. It's not just the return that's important. It's what happens when he does come back. The quality of the return matters. Men are not just returning to the past. They are returning to the person who they believe has evolved during their absence. It is your growth, your transformation, your journey of resilience that makes you compelling even after he has left. Well, what does that mean? Well, you cannot wait around idly expecting someone to return and fill a void. You must fill that void yourself. You must grow independently of their absence, becoming someone who you yourself can admire. The reason they come back is not just because of what you offered them, but because you have become someone who has offered themselves something even greater. I have you, and now I am you, and therefore I am. And therefore all life has limitations. And once I see that, become someone who has offered themselves something even greater. To put it another way, a man does not return to someone who is static, who is waiting. He returns to someone who is dynamic, who is living, who is becoming more than what they once were. And this is where the power lies, not in waiting for validation, but in continually evolving as an individual. If the truth, then, is this. Men return because in a world of chaos, in a world of distraction, they realize that there was something deeply significant about what they had with you. But you should never need him to validate that significance. Your worth is not contingent on his return, nor should your life revolve around the possibility of it. Your journey, your life, your growth, these things should be the focus. So why do men return to you after no contact? Because they have recognized in their own way that you are a part of their journey, an essential one. But more importantly, you've become someone they need, not because you are needy, but because you have shown them the power of what it means to be a person who stands on their own, who evolves, who grows, and who fills the voids in their own life, filled by youth. And it's important to note, too, that In the end, it's not about the return, it's about your ability to continue without needing it. The real question you should ask yourself is not why he returns, but why you have become the person capable of living fully regardless of whether or not he comes back. So in the future, when you come back, you won't be defeated because within you is a confidence left by your capacity, and you're trying to recreate the person you once were. So in the future, when you come back, you won't be defeated because within you was the capacity to remain without him in the first place. Absence is a powerful force in relationships. It is often in the moments when someone is no longer present that we begin to truly understand their significance. Initially, absence may seem like a physical distance, a temporary separation that time will eventually heal. However, the impact of absence runs much deeper, especially in the context of emotional connections. When someone steps away, their absence creates a void. This void isn't simply an empty space where they once were. It's a reminder of what was lost and, more importantly, what was once cherished. In that absence, emotions such as longing, regret, and sometimes even resentment emerge, and the individual who is left behind is forced to confront the complexities of their feelings. This emotional space provides the opportunity for reflection. What was the relationship built on? What was truly meaningful about it? The absence brings a clarity that can often be clouded by daily interactions and distractions. So when you go back after vacation and look at your list, you can notice the sort of clarity or the moreover, absence can heighten the importance of what is no longer there. It forces a reevaluation of priorities and forces the mind to focus on the emotional gaps left behind. Often this absence becomes a catalyst for growth and self-awareness. People tend to realize their own strengths, the aspects of themselves that they may have ignored or downplayed while in the relationship. Then, absence, therefore, is not just the physical departure of a person. It is the beginning of a personal reckoning, a moment when the individual is required to rediscover themselves outside of the relationship's influence. Between drinks with my other friends, we spoke about the previous 9 years. Every time we came around to it, we looked at each other intently for a while. This realization does not come easily. It can be painful, filled with moments of doubt, but it also marks a crucial shift in perspective, where the person left behind learns that absence does not equal loss. It can be a powerful moment of transformation. Introspection is a critical part of human growth, particularly when faced with the absence of someone significant in our lives. When people are removed from our daily routines, the absence forces us to turn inward and examine our thoughts, feelings, and actions in ways we may not have done before. It's in these moments of solitude that we are often confronted with uncomfortable truths and realizations about ourselves. In the midst of this silence, the mind has the space to roam, to reflect on past choices, and to assess the role we played in the dynamics of the relationship. This process of self-examination is not always easy. It requires vulnerability and an honest look at our own behaviors, insecurities, and desires. We may begin to question why certain things happened, why we allowed certain patterns to form, or even why we reacted the way we did. This can be an uncomfortable process, as it often reveals aspects of ourselves that we may have suppressed or avoided facing in the heat of the moment. However, introspection has the potential to be profoundly transformative. It provides clarity and allows us to understand ourselves better. By digging into the deeper layers of our thoughts and emotions, we can uncover insights that lead to meaningful change. It offers the opportunity to assess our needs, redefine our boundaries, and make better choices in future relationships. During introspection, we also recognize the importance of growth, how our experiences, including the painful ones, shape us into stronger and more self-aware individuals. The absence of someone triggers this internal journey, pushing us to confront not just the external loss, but the internal growth that must occur in response to it. Introspection allows us to emerge from these periods of solitude more complete, more equipped to handle the complexities of future relationships and challenges. Connection is a fundamental aspect of being human. From the moment we are born, we are wired for attachment, for interaction with others. It shapes our identity, influences our behavior, and plays a significant role in our emotional well-being. In relationships, connection is what binds individuals together, what makes us feel understood, valued, and supported. When this connection is strong, it creates a sense of stability, a feeling that we are not alone in the world, that we belong to something bigger than ourselves. However, when the connection is severed, whether through a breakup, distance, or any other form of separation, the impact is profound. The loss of that bond creates a void, and the individual often struggles with feelings of loneliness, confusion, and even abandonment. This is where the complexity of connection becomes apparent. We are deeply affected by the presence or absence of others in our lives. When someone leaves, it's not just the physical presence we miss, it's the emotional security that their connection provided, because they were part of our society. They had a meaningful role in our society. And so when somebody moves, they trigger a disruption because the social norm destroys the relationships we had with them already. The absence of connection forces us to face a fundamental truth. We are not isolated beings. We rely on our relationships to navigate the world, to find meaning, and to give our lives purpose. Without these connections, we are left to grapple with the question of who we are without the influence of others. In this struggle, we come to realize that while the connection may have been severed, the need for it never truly disappears. It's almost like our spirit rebounds here. This longing for connection drives individuals to reconsider what was once lost, prompting introspection, reflection, and sometimes even reconciliation, so that they may again begin to learn to understand the gap. At its core, the desire to reconnect is a desire for understanding, for emotional validation, and for the sense that we are worthy of love and companionship. The strength of these connections lies in the emotional bonds we form with others, and in their absence, we are reminded of how integral those relationships are to our sense of self and belonging. If a human being and object interdependency, is based on relationships with others and belonging, growth is an essential aspect of life, particularly in the context of relationships. It is often in moments of distance, absence, or separation that growth becomes not only possible but necessary. People change, whether they intend to or not, and these changes can be either subtle or profound. Growth is a continual process, a response to the challenges and experiences we face. Like in the context of a relationship, it can be seen in how individuals evolve over time, how they adapt to circumstances, and how they become more self-aware as they learn from their past actions. In the context of a relationship, it means developing virtues and learning how to proceed in the right direction instead of trying to improve on the wrong one. In relationships, growth often comes from the moments when we are forced to confront the discomforts and difficulties that arise. It's easy to remain stagnant when everything is comfortable and familiar, but discomfort pushes us to question ourselves, our choices, and our behaviors. This is the essence of personal development, embracing the tension of uncertainty and using it as fuel for change. When someone leaves or creates distance, it often acts as a catalyst for this growth. We are faced with the space they left behind, a void that forces us to fill it with something meaningful. Usually that something is ourselves. This growth doesn't happen in isolation. It's influenced by the relationships we have, the experiences we go through, and the lessons we learn. We may realize that we have neglected certain parts of ourselves, or we may discover new strengths and capabilities that were previously hidden. Through this process, we develop a clearer understanding of who we are, what we want, and what we need in relationships. Growth in this sense is about becoming more of who we are meant to be, not just in the context of romantic relationships, but in all aspects of life. In the true sense of the word truth, Suzerist would say that there are no truth. This language comes from the word truth. It means that there are no masters and there are no slaves. True growth comes from the courage to change, to adapt, and to transform into someone who is more in tune with their own values, needs, and purpose. And so utility, the central premise of utilitarians, is one of the most important lessons learned, so we can listen to our own true nature in service of others. Significance is often an overlooked concept in relationships, but it plays a pivotal role in how we understand our connections with others. The importance of any relationship is not just about the moments we share, but about the depth of meaning those moments hold. Relationships, especially meaningful ones, provide a sense of purpose and direction. They give us a mirror through which we can better understand ourselves and our place in the world. It is often when someone is absent from our lives that we truly begin to grasp the weight of what they represented to us, not just in practical terms, but emotionally and spiritually. For Jean's death and for the family struggles today, we must often try to understand the real reason for families and individuals striving for equality. When we feel the absence of someone significant, we are forced to evaluate the impact they had on our emotional landscape. This can be disorienting, especially when we haven't fully appreciated what they contributed to our sense of well-being. At times we take for granted the people who are consistently present. not realizing that their presence brings balance, comfort, and a unique form of fulfillment. Only in their absence do we realize how much they shaped our day-to-day reality, how much their influence permeated even the smallest interactions. The absence of someone important underscores the idea that significance is not about quantity or frequency, but about quality and depth. It's not necessarily the amount of time spent together, but the emotional resonance of those moments. When someone leaves, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, the emptiness they leave behind serves as a reminder of how integral they were to the fabric of our lives. This is when significance becomes undeniable. It is in the quiet space left by their departure that we see clearly the true role they played in our emotional ecosystem, and we start to understand just how much they meant to us. Evolution is a fundamental aspect of human life. It is the process by which we adapt, learn, and transform in response to our circumstances. In relationships, evolution occurs not just through the changes we experience as individuals, but through how we interact, grow, and sometimes evolve together with others. However, when a relationship ends or experiences distance, it often becomes a powerful catalyst for individual evolution. We are forced to look inward, to reconsider who we are outside of that relationship, and to redefine our identity without the influence of another person. So even if you experience this, listening to this while you're fixing somebody, this evolution is not something that happens overnight, nor is it always comfortable. It's the product of facing challenges, enduring pain, and coming to terms with the changes that life forces upon us. During a period of separation or no contact, individuals often find themselves in a state of reflection, contemplating what has occurred and what can be learned. In this process, we begin to realize that we are not static beings. We are constantly evolving, and this evolution doesn't stop with the end of a relationship. It continues regardless of external circumstances. That is what it means to live an enlightened life and to live in a healthy relationship. In fact, sometimes a period of absence allows us to evolve more rapidly. Without the distractions of constant interaction, we can focus on our own personal growth. We might discover new interests, refine our goals, and become more attuned to our needs and desires. This evolution often leads to a stronger sense of self, a deeper understanding of our values, and a more resilient approach to life. And so, the temptation to stay the same is already there, and with a good reason. While relationships can shape us, it is in the absence of those relationships that we often find our most profound growth. The time apart allows us to emerge as more fully realized versions of ourselves. This evolution is not about rejecting the past, but about integrating what we've learned into a better, more complete version of who we are. Reflection is an inevitable part of the human experience, especially in the aftermath of a significant change or loss. When a person leaves our life or when we are separated from someone, the natural response is to look back and consider what has transpired. Reflection is not just about looking at past events. It is about analyzing the underlying emotions, behaviors, and patterns that shaped the relationship. It is a process of gaining insight into the choices we made, how we responded to certain situations, and how those choices have impacted our personal development. And so, this process of reflection can be difficult because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. We may realize that we were complicit in certain dynamics, that we ignored red flags, or that we failed to communicate in ways that could have prevented misunderstandings. These realizations can be painful, but they are essential to personal growth. Reflection helps us break free from the cycle of repeating the same mistakes, offering us the clarity we need to make better decisions in the future. Furthermore, reflection allows us to acknowledge the value that the relationship brought to our lives. Even if it ended poorly, there are often lessons embedded in every connection we form. These lessons are not always apparent in the moment, but with time and distance, we begin to see the broader picture. We begin to understand how our past relationships shaped our current selves, how they taught us what we value, and how they informed our future desires and expectations. It is in the quiet moments of reflection that we gain the clarity to move forward with intention. It's in these moments that we can start to understand what we truly need in our lives and begin to craft the path ahead, not based on what was lost, but on what we have learned and how we can use that knowledge to evolve. So we just learned that Marshall Anderson is the founder of Differences Displaced, and he'll be explaining what Differences Displaced is all about. So without further ado, let's go to Displaced Having the Moment. Resilience is one of the most powerful attributes a person can develop, especially when faced with emotional turmoil or the loss of a significant connection. Life is full of challenges, and relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, are no exception. The ability to endure, recover, and adapt in the face of adversity is what defines resilience. In relationships, resilience is not about avoiding pain or hardship. Rather, it's about navigating through those difficult moments and emerging stronger. When someone leaves or when distance creeps in, it tests our capacity to bounce back and move forward without being defined solely by the loss. Resilience isn't a trait that we are simply born with. It is cultivated through experience. Each time we face difficulty and find a way to persevere, we build our resilience. We learn that while pain is inevitable, it does not have to be permanent. After a period of no contact or emotional separation, people often find that they have grown more resilient, more capable of facing future challenges with a stronger sense of self. This process of building resilience involves a combination of acceptance, self-awareness, and the willingness to adapt. Acceptance means acknowledging the reality of the situation without denial or avoidance. It's about understanding that what happened cannot be undone and that the future is what we make of it. Self-awareness is key because it allows us to understand our emotional responses and to manage them effectively. We realize that while emotions may be intense, they do not dictate our worth or our ability to recover. Finally, resilience is about adaptation, learning from the past, adjusting our approach, and forging ahead with a renewed sense of purpose. Resilience ultimately empowers us to take control of our narrative. It reminds us that we are not defined by our setbacks, but by how we rise from them. It is the quiet strength that allows us to endure, to heal, and to continue forward with confidence. Independence is a cornerstone of personal development and well-being. It is not simply about being self-sufficient or physically detached from others, but about cultivating a strong sense of autonomy and self-reliance in all aspects of life. In the context of relationships, independence takes on an even greater significance. When we are in a close relationship, it's easy to become intertwined with the other person's identity, their needs, and their desires. At some point in full relationship, the danger lies in losing sight of our own individuality, our own dreams, and our own needs. True independence is about maintaining a healthy sense of self, even when deeply involved with others. When a person is separated from us, whether temporarily or permanently, it creates a space where independence can be nurtured. The absence of the other person forces us to reconnect with who we are outside the relationship. We may rediscover interests, passions, or goals that were put on hold. We may begin to recognize areas of our life that require attention, and we take responsibility for nurturing those aspects of ourselves. In this sense, independence is not about rejecting relationships or emotional connections, but about realizing that our happiness and sense of worth are not solely dependent on others. The absence creates a powerful opportunity for self-discovery and personal growth. It allows us to reassess our values, needs, and boundaries. It also empowers us to make decisions that are rooted in our own desires, rather than in the expectations of others. Independence, in this sense, is a form of liberation. It frees us from the emotional dependence that can sometimes cloud our judgment and enables us to live more authentically. If this came before World War I, it seems unfathomable that humans. In relationships, independence is not about isolation. It is about ensuring that we are whole and complete on our own, and that any connection we form with others is an addition to, not a replacement of, our individual sense of self. Rather, this ensures that the friendship is not based on isolation, but is a basis on comprehension being really the indicator. Validation is a deeply human need. It is the desire to feel seen, heard, and understood by others. In relationships, it is often the foundation on which emotional connection is built. When we seek validation, we are looking for confirmation of our worth, our feelings, and our experiences. We want others to recognize our efforts, our emotions, and our identities. However, this need for validation can become complicated, particularly when we rely on others to define our sense of self-worth. The desire for validation can often be amplified during periods of emotional distance or separation. When someone we care about is no longer present in our lives, there is a natural longing for reassurance. We may wonder if we were enough, if the connection we shared held any true value. The absence of validation from the person who once affirmed us can lead to a sense of doubt, insecurity, and confusion. This is a vulnerable time as we face the reality that our self-worth may have been overly tied to someone else's approval. However, it is in these moments that we are presented with an opportunity to redefine validation. True validation comes not from others, but from within ourselves. We must learn to recognize our own value, to affirm our worth without needing external confirmation. It is about embracing self-acceptance, understanding that our feelings are valid and our experiences are meaningful, regardless of whether others recognize them. This shift in perspective is liberating because it places the power to define our worth back in our own hands. Through this process, we become more resilient and grounded, understanding that while validation from others is important, it is not the foundation of our sense of self. We are the ones who determine our value.